Hey there, welcome back. So, as part of my 1,000 subscriber special, that's going to be 3 parts. I'm going to take a look at making the exact same game, this one, in 3 different engines. I'm going to make it in Godot, I'm going to make it in Unity, and I'm going to make it in GameMaker Studio 2. And then I'll discuss the differences between the engines by discussing the differences that I had in my experience of making this game. So, let's get into how I would make this in Godot. Alright, so first let's talk about the design of the game. This is kind of a mashup of Drop 7, and there's a Game Boy Kirby puzzle game. I cannot remember the name of it, but that really influenced the aesthetic, this 4-color palette. I came up with this idea for the last Game Boy Jam, GB Jam 6, I think, but I didn't finish it. I didn't even really work on it at all for that jam. I just thought of it and then got busy doing something else and then didn't do anything with it. So I decided I would, throw my hand at trying to actually make this. So the idea is it's a grid-based puzzle game. Each of these pieces have numbers on them. If I have that many numbers in a row or a column, then that piece will blow up. These boxes will not do that. Instead, they need to have a piece triggered next to them. I'd like to change kind of the language that I'm communicating to the player. Maybe instead of having these have numbers on them have maybe 2 different sizes of hearts and have it go from, a big heart to a small heart and then collapse, or maybe something like that. Up here, I have these little markers that tell me about my turn. So every time the pieces all settle, one marker goes away. When all the markers go away, another row of full boxes appears at the top of the screen. If everything moves down beneath this line right here, game over. So it's really influenced by Drop 7 and, like I said, that unknown Kirby Game Boy game. So let's talk about how I made this in Godot. So I spent about 4 hours maybe. I was pretty distracted while I was making it, so it wasn't like 4 uninterrupted hours. The game itself consists of a main scene, and then I have a parent piece scene here, which just has a node 2D, a sprite, and then a movement tween, which is how I get that kind of bouncy effect as it falls into place. And then each piece has its own scene. I didn't have to do it this way, but this is just how I thought of doing it off the top of my head. So I've got like the 1, the 2, 3, and so on. That container has its own scene right here. It by default has 2 hits, so it keeps track of its hits and it keeps track of its movement tween the same way the regular pieces do. Let's see, I have a scene for the explosion. The explosion just has the node 2D, a sprite, and an animation player that plays the explosion animation that I made. And then I have my main scene. My main scene, if I were thinking, here's one of the things I really like about Godot, and this is one of the arguments for it, is I could take this grid scene, right-click, and I could save this out as a scene itself. And then that way, in the future, whenever I'm making another grid-based puzzle game, I can just use this grid scene here. I can just take it directly out of this game and plop it directly into another one. And then all of a sudden, any grid-based puzzle game automatically has a grid built for it, which I think is kind of one of the neater things about Godot. So like here's my grid scene. I have my grid, my spawn position, and then when I drop it into another game, I could just take away anything I don't want. But this grid scene has encapsulated inside of it everything I would need. I would just need to take this and then the script it's referencing. So that's kind of neat. The other thing that I really like about how Godot does stuff is this tween node that's already part of it. I'm already thinking about how I would make this in Unity, and in order to get the exact same effect, I would have to import an external library into Unity, either iTween or uTween or one of those, to get the same effect, whereas in Godot, that tween node is built right in. The other thing, I'm not really using signals here. I'm using one signal, I think, and that is to update the score. I'm sending a signal from the grid to the UI. Sorry for that weird cut. I'm really only using the signal system once here. I'm sending a signal from the grid to the UI to update. And even if I were to take this whole grid away, or the UI away, because there's not a rigid connection between these two, it's just a signal, like raising an event flag, I wouldn't have any issues if I were to take that away. Let's see, I'm using the built-in tile map node to make both my background, which is just, the background consists of just a blank old 16 by 16 square, and then on the actual playing field, it's a 16 by 16 square with just 4 little dots, one at each corner, to make it look more like a grid. And then I have some little decorations I made. I'm not super happy with the aesthetics of this. I'd like to add something more for the eye to look at outside of the playing field, aside from just an empty teal expanse. So I'd like to change that. And yeah, but in general, this was very easy to put together using Godot's built-in systems. The only thing that I really found kind of hard to work with is when I was making 2 different arrays. Making those 2 arrays in Godot were a little weird. First, I made an array of the movement marks, which are these. And if I were making this array in Unity, it would be really easy just to say move marks is equal to an empty array, and then make it public, and then set the array in the inspector. The other thing is, when I'm making an array of the possible pieces I could load into the scene, it would have been really, really easy for me in Unity to just say that this is an empty array, make it public, and then load in those prefabs. In Godot, and right now I'm using 3.1 alpha, you still can't make an exported array of packed scenes, which is something that they might be adding in the future. I don't know. I haven't looked at their docs about what's coming up, but for now, it's just a little tedious, especially if I had like a bunch more pieces I wanted to select from. Other than that, it's not too bad. And also, I've talked about this before, making a 2D array in GD script is tedious unless you remember how to make arrays from, forever and a day ago. So you have to have this, I call it make 2D array function that I put into pretty much every puzzle game I ever make. I'm going to want a 2D array. And so I'll just make that 2D array. And then when you're referencing it in script, you have to do this kind of awkward this array, comma, this array, because it's actually an array that holds arrays. That's how you make a 2D array in GD script. So in general, my process of making this was pretty easy, pretty smooth, and I would say that the outcome I have right now is pretty usable. Like I said, there's some things I would change. The control is a little squicky. I'd like to fine-tune that a bit, but I really like how I get that effect. I like the explosion effect I have in here. I have a little state machine that's working already. So in general, the things that I think that would work for Godot, or at least in Godot's favor for a 2D puzzle game like this, are, like I said, the tween node. Oh yeah, and also in my grid, there is a timer node, which means that making a timer is really easy. I don't have to do any of that, either counting down using a coroutine or counting down using a variable that I'm decrementing every update loop. So making a timer and having that timer work is very, very easy and nice. So yeah, like I said, I'll probably throw this project up on itch so you guys can play around with it if you want to. Other than that, I will be coming back and I'll be remaking this game using Unity next. And then I'll discuss what makes Unity easier to make games for and what makes it more difficult to make games for. I kind of like this idea of going through an actual project when I'm discussing what makes a game easy versus hard, because it's something concrete for you to look at so you can actually tell. And to be completely honest, I think both Unity and Godot are pretty awesome. There are reasons that Unity might be something you'd want to use for a project over Godot, and there are reasons that you might want to use Godot over Unity for other projects. And I think that by going through something concrete like this, I can really get that point across. So If you have any questions or if you know the name of that Kirby game, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Otherwise, you can leave any questions. You can follow me on Twitter, find out when I post new videos. You can join my Discord, where I've been chatting pretty much every day. And yeah, have yourselves a wonderful day.